Welcome into Hog Zone with Locked On Razorbacks. That means, of course, we're joined by Locked On Razorbacks podcast host John Nabors. We'll also hear from Robin Hearn and Nick Luttrell a little later on. But, John, for now, welcome in. You made it down back to Little Rock. What'd you think?
Well, honestly, I was impressed. You never know what these games are going to be like, especially whenever you're coming down to Little Rock. We've seen some crazy games happen, not necessarily paid out for Arkansas very well, but today was great for them. I mean, I know it's a historical game, playing Arkansas State and everything, but whenever you cover the spread, you beat them handedly, and you get out of there with a victory, and for the most part seemed healthy. We'll see how some of it plays out, but overall, I was very impressed.
Like you mentioned, not just covering the spread, but doing so with authority, and it didn't take long at all. I mean, 2 plays, Mike Washington touchdown. Next drive, a Talon touchdown pass. Was that feel important just to the Hogs coming out so fast and strong?
I think so. I think to really go out there and to dominate and show that you are the better team from the start was huge. And then to add into the mix to where you got a little bit of adversity, you got hit with a little bit, you had a couple turnovers. How did you weather that? I really liked the Arkansas response, especially in the third quarter, because not to say that the game was ever in hand, but you just felt like that you needed to see more. You needed to see when they go through that, how are they going to battle back, because they're going to go through a lot of adversity this year. I was really impressed to see how the offense came back, battled back. I love the pieces. They spread out the ball in the passing game.
I
know it was great
this year.
It's like if you're Ole Miss, who you targeting? You know, if you're on defense, who are you going to guard? You don't really know because they have so many options there. So I just love the versatility of this offense and the way that they responded.
Do you think? I mean, we mentioned it. I think 7 different Razorbacks scored in game 1. 8 different Razorbacks scored. Does that feel what this offense is actually going to be? A more function of opponent, a mixture?
Well, what you're hoping is that it's going to be a bunch of different players that are involved. Now, I always refer back to the Bobby Petrino offenses of the 2010, 2011. You hear Joe Adams, Jarius Wright, Greg Childs, Kobe Hamilton, DJ Williams, Chris Gregg, Nile Davis, Dennis Johnson, Ronnie Wingo. Those were all players people knew because they were always involved in the offense. And I think that that's what you're wanting to see. I'm not saying that those players then are just as good as the players are now or vice versa. But what I'm saying is that you want to have those options. You want to have that versatility. That's what a Bobby Petrino offense is about, beating you in various ways and keeping you on your toes where you really never know what's going to happen.
You mentioned Bobby Petrino. The whole talk of the offseason was Talon Green's going to be back for year 2 in a Bobby Petrino offense. And did you know that quarterbacks usually do better in their second year under Bobby Petrino?
Who would have guessed?
We've seen 2 games now. Have you seen enough? Is this the next level Talon Green?
I mean, what I've seen has been incredible. I know he had 2 interceptions today, but at this point in time, he's already got, 13 total touchdowns on the season in 2 games? I'll take that. He threw for 6 touchdown passes in the first game. He has 4 touchdown passes in this game, 10 total touchdowns in 2 games. I don't know really what more you could ask of him. And then that big run that he had today, I mean, he looked like Matt Jones a little bit out there. So I love what I'm seeing.
It was, in fact, the longest run from an Arkansas quarterback since Matt Jones.
It's almost like poetic, if that's the case. So I just love the fact that he's, again, got to stay healthy, but he's definitely looking the part. And if he can continue to develop, we'll see what he does against Ole Miss, see what he does on a test on the road. But so far, I've been extremely impressed by Talon Green, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the season holds for him.
All right, John, we will come back and talk plenty more Arkansas State, but now we're going to go over to the other side of our studio here and welcome in the 3rd member of this Hog Zone with Locked On Razorbacks team, Nick Luttrell. Nick?
Tyler, John, thanks so much. I'm Nick Luttrell. Joined up in Northwest Arkansas, we got Robin Hearn joining me up in Channel 5 for up in Northwest Arkansas. Robin, they just talked a lot about the offense, and the offense was great. They put up a lot of points. If you don't mind, I want to ask you about the defense first. How do you feel like the defense performed in today's win against the Red Wolves?
Yeah, Nick, I really think that the defense did what they needed to do. They brought a lot of pressure. Now, they did allow quite a few different explosive plays, but they did what they needed to do in the 3rd season here with Travis Williams. And we know that that secondary is his bread and butter, and that's exactly what they needed to do. I mean, they showed a lot of pressure, especially when it came to a couple of times getting a few sacks there and that interception that they were able to get. So the defense was very impressive, but the offense obviously shined out a lot in this one.
Yeah, Personally, I was impressed by Phillip Lee, what he was able to do for Arkansas. He's the edge rusher who has had experience playing at other schools. He comes in from the transfer portal. He's able to make a really big impact in this game. We saw Quincy Rhodes, a Little Rock guy, get involved in this game. The defense had their moments, and again, they only gave up one touchdown in this game is what we all have to remember. The other touchdown was the special teams fault for missing. I don't know who it was that missed that one tackle on the special teams when Arkansas State returned it for 100 yards on the kickoff return touchdown, but it was their fault for special teams for allowing that touchdown. The defense, and Sam Pittman said it in his post-game press conference, it was penalties down the stretch for the defense that allowed that one touchdown from the Red Wolves. But I think when you talk about this game, you got to be impressed with the Arkansas defense. And then you mentioned the offense, of course, too. John and Tyler talked about it. Taylen Green just finding so many different weapons that has to give this offense a lot of confidence heading into a top 20 matchup next weekend in Oxford.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they mentioned it in the show, but I also want to reiterate it because it's really impressive having 8 different guys to go to. Omega Blake doing most of the work there with 64 yards on the day. But I mean, come on now. This offense, you've been able to see these targets. And that was another question coming into this season was who was Taylen Green going to be able to target? We know that he can do whatever he can do on the ground. And he led the team in rushing today with over 150 rushing yards and getting a touchdown himself. But who were going to be those key guys? And Omega Blake is stepping up as one of them. Raylan Sharp, another one, obviously getting on in the action. CJ Brown, Jalen Brown, just to name a few. So this offense with these targets, I'm impressed to see exactly what he has done so far and what he will be doing later on in the season, especially against that Ole Miss defense. They're very tough.
Yeah. Okay, Robin, thank you so much for joining us. John, I actually want to bring it back to you for my final question, kind of final topic of discussion. Bringing back the discussion to Taylen Green, what he was able to do today. He played great, but 2 interceptions. Does that concern you going forward, John?
No, at all. Because, listen, quarterbacks are going to make mistakes, and, Taylen Green, in the way that he plays, he's going to take some risks. I mean, he's going to do some things to where he's going to try to make it work and try to force a throw. But listen, you're going to have to live with that. It's kind of like having a guy who can hit a bunch of home runs but strike out a bunch. You'll live with it as long as there's more home runs than strikeouts. But I don't see it as a problem. I see him as just kind of coming into his own and figuring some things out. I'm all about him taking more risk. You don't want to see him turn the ball over, but having a couple picks today, I'm not changing my mind about it.
Yeah, like you said, as long as the touchdowns are more frequent, the interceptions you can live with, because what's the number one rule in every sport except for golf? Score more points than their team. That's what Arkansas did today against Arkansas State pretty darn handily. All right, we're going to keep talking about this game and what lies ahead when we return on Hog Zone. Welcome back into Hog Zone with Locked On Razorbacks. John, we talked at length about Taylen Green and the passing offense and just how he's been spreading the love the first couple games. But the other side of the offense, the run game, was almost a bit of a concern in that first game. It might have just been game script. The passing game was working. Why run it? We saw a little bit more, especially out of Mike Washington today.
Yeah, it was great because so much during fall camp did we hear about Mike Washington, explosiveness, and Bobby Petrino thinks he's like Nile Davis and he's got all this speed. It's like, great. So let's see it, and we didn't really get a chance to do it against Alabama A&M, which is a team that you feel like if you're going to do it against them. If you can't do it against them, then what's the problem? And so I was hoping that at some point in time, especially in the early going, because we know the schedule gets difficult, could we see Mike Washington be that guy and be the guy that we've been hearing so much about? You saw the explosiveness. You saw what these coaches have been seeing from him in these practices. Can he keep it up? Can it be consistent? Time will tell. But I think it was also great for him. And I think the offensive line did a really good job of opening those holes for him and the other running backs. And just the kind of schemes that they have, the type of running plays they were doing, a lot of stretch plays that were going out that just really worked out. So I just felt like overall it was a great and well-executed game plan offensively. But I always want to see about the guys that we've heard about all fall camp. Are they actually going to live up to that billing? I was really impressed by Mike Washington today. Yeah,
like you said, Mike was kind of the sleeper pick for a lot of people. He was the trendy, hey, have you heard about this Mike Washington guy? The coaches are really talking up Mike Washington. Yeah. He's been looking great all camp. And like I said, We didn't see it in the first game. We don't really know what was the full reasoning for that. But you also mentioned the offensive line, and like you said, it's the types of runs. It's not just that they were opening holes. They were holding blocks for a good amount of time. Now, again, with all due respect to Arkansas State and the Sun Belt, that's going to get a lot more difficult going forward. But that's what we didn't see against Alabama A&M and what you needed to see against Arkansas State to feel that confidence. And kind of on that note, one of the biggest detractors of that first game was the defense, specifically how the defense looked at first against Alabama A&M when they kind of carved them up a little bit. Did you see the steps forward you needed to see this week?
I did. I was really impressed by the defense. I know people are going to see the 14 points or the amount of yards that were given up. But listen, you got to give some credit to Arkansas State. I think Rainer's a great quarterback. I think they have some really talented pieces, and their offense is really good. But it's about, okay, so how does your defense respond from not me saying it, not you saying it. Sam Pittman said last week that he was not happy with the way that game started against Alabama A&M.
Well, yeah, we said it too. Sam's a bit more authority.
They won't get mad at him as much as they will us if we say it. But either way, it was nice to see that change of where you go in against a, quote, better offense. They'd have some better playmakers, and I know that their best running back's out for the season, but still, they contained them. They did a really good job. They got after the quarterback many times, which was something I was always nervous about because you mentioned Phillip Lee, but whether it's him or Cam Ball or Quincy Rhodes, whoever it is, it seemed like there was a lot of guys that were back there in the backfield. So that's why I wanted to see, because it doesn't matter how good your linebackers are or your secondary guys are. If you can't rush the quarterback, it's not going to matter. And so I need to see more of the pass rush. I saw a good bit of it today. Can they continue it on? Do they have the depth for it? Time will tell, but it was good to see them at least kind of break through and improve upon what they did a week ago.
And then also just talking about the secondary, I mean, the stars that A-State do have, I mean, Jalen Raynor, again, a very good quarterback who's been there and experienced. And then his biggest weapon as far as wide receivers go, Corey Rucker, was a guy who you thought, okay, Arkansas could contain everyone else. He might still go off and you feel all right. But they did a great job of locking down him and the rest of the wide receivers as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, you saw guys that stepped up, especially like a Connie Walker, for instance. You know, we have been hearing a little bit about him. And that's my biggest thing when it comes from fall camp into these early games. Guys we hear about, okay, let's see it. You know, we don't get to watch practices all the time, but we have to go off what the coaches say, and they keep bringing up Connie Walker.
They stretch great from what we see.
Yeah, apparently, yeah, they're the best stretchers there are. But I want to see more of that. So seeing Connie Walker, okay, this is what they saw in this guy. This is what they saw from him. This is the type of player he can be, and an impact player. So the more I get of that, the more confident I'm going to be. Does that mean I think they're going to go undefeated 12-0? As much as that'd be cool, I don't think so. But it's just, it is giving Razorback fans a little sense of, okay, maybe this can be great. And seeing these players step up that you haven't really heard much about or didn't feel like there was going to be great players out of the portal, if they can develop and they can be those guys, it's going to make you feel just so much better going into some of these matchups.
Yeah, the secondary was such a question mark. And like you said, you hear little rumbles about guys, but it was a little bit about a lot. So good to see, you know, actual names start to take shape a little bit. All right, you mentioned, you know, they only gave up 14 points. Really, the defense only gave up one score.
True.
Special teams, the last couple of years has been a bit of a begrudging point, I think, among Razorbacks and the fans. We saw that kind of rear its ugly head again today. Is that a point of concern?
I don't think so, because to me, I'll go ahead and say it. I think that Arkansas might have the best punter-kicker combo in the country. And I know Scott Starzik's a freshman, but that guy went out there and booted a 50-yard field goal, you know, last week. As a true freshman, if you have that type of mentality, I think he's going to end up being great. And Devin Bale's great too. You're going to have mistakes. Now, this is not something that should happen. It can't happen. It was a very bad effort on that kickoff. But I don't look at it as being like, oh, geez, they just don't have the players out there to make the tackles. It's like, no, you just have those breakdowns. Scott Fountain was very upset. Sam Pittman was upset at Scott Fountain. So it's just a play. You know, you don't want to see it happen. I'm glad it happened today instead of going up against some other big-time team that could cost you the entire game. You know, luckily you had some other things. But as far as being a major concern, no. If it happens again, okay. But one time, hey, a dead clock's right twice a day. Sometimes it's just going to happen.
And special teams is a funny thing. They do their job right 95% of the time, and you don't really talk about them. And then you mess up once, and it's a big thing. It's, you know, like being a kicker, of course, is part of special teams. The guys banging home field goals, extra points left and right, but you miss that one at the end. That's all anyone's going to talk about. And I don't think anyone's questioned Arkansas's kicking game for the last few years, at least.
No, just keep kicking it out.
Shout out to the Jaguars, and my guy can't win.
Oh, yeah. Well, just keep kicking it out of the end zone, and That's how you guarantee that nobody's going to ever return it on you.
If Devin Bale can just perfect the move he pulled out against Alabama A&M, where you bounce it off an opposing player and recover it yourself.
That's a great play. They should try that again sometime.
Yeah, and look, he gets that down. He might be the first place kicker taken like top 10 in the NFL draft.
Might have
what
to
a
be.
weapon that could be. All right, we'll talk about it more up next, but I just want to real quick get into next week. It's the SEC. It's Ole Miss. Did not look great against Kentucky today. Escaped with a win. It's pretty early in the season for non-conference or for conference play to get going. How prepared do you feel the Hogs are?
I think that this is as good of a situation that they could ask for, being on the road against a quality SEC opponent like Ole Miss. Ole Miss had to prepare for Kentucky on the road already. They ended up getting the win. It was a close game, as you mentioned. And I'm not trying to play any disrespect towards Alabama A&M and Arkansas State, but that's your main test is week 3. So you've been able to kind of work towards that and plan for it. I know it's a night game, but Oxford's not exactly the most intimidating atmosphere of all time. We know that this game is bananas every year. You never know what to expect between Arkansas and Ole Miss. So to me, I think Arkansas's in a great spot. I think that they're in a great spot because they've caused enough on film to where Ole Miss is going to be like, we don't really know what they're going to do offensively because they're so good at different things. I think that as far as the defense goes, are they going to go out there and hold them to 14 points? That'd be awesome, but I don't think this is the Ole Miss offense from a year ago or the previous year. So I like them. I'm not saying they're going to win, but it's the ultimate test. If they can go out there and take care of business and beat Ole Miss, and if they do, it's going to be a close game. But if they do, it's going to be really hard for Razorback fans, but myself included, to not start thinking, you know what? Maybe, maybe they could flirt with the playoff a little bit. I don't know. Maybe we start getting too crazy here, but that will be the ultimate test, and I don't look at Ole Miss as some impossible game that Arkansas can't win. I like Arkansas's chances.
And they say it's the hope that kills you, but it's also the hope that sustains you, especially when you're a Razorback fan. And hey, 2-0's got to have you feeling hopeful. All right, as we said, SEC play looms large in the future, but in the immediate future, it's more Hog Zone with Locked On Razorbacks when we return. Welcome back into Hog Zone with Locked On Razorbacks. Tyler Cass with Locked On Razorbacks host John Nabors. John, I don't know how much around the SEC looking you've got to do today. We talked about Ole Miss and Kentucky and the issues that Ole Miss had. They couldn't lose the Wildcats 2 years in a row. That'd be too much. But the general consensus, Florida goes down. Obviously, Alabama lost last week. Last I looked, they're putting a beat down on Louisiana Monroe, taking out some anger. But does it feel kind of like not necessarily a down year for the SEC, but a beatable year for the SEC?
I think so. Now, I am not saying that Arkansas is going to win all of these games. However, after 2 weeks, if you look at the rest of the SEC schedule for Arkansas, there's not a single game where I look at it and be like, oh my goodness, just zero chance. Even LSU struggled against Louisiana Tech today. And I thought after the way they played Clemson, I'm like, this might be the best team. But then Clemson almost lost to Troy. Yes. Yeah. So it's like, who's good? Who's good right now? We don't know, except maybe Ohio State. But the point is when I'm looking at Arkansas where it stands right now in week 2, if you told me they were going to beat Ole Miss, I'm not going to be shocked. If you told me they were going to beat a team like Mississippi State, which I know they had a good win today, but Mississippi State or Auburn or Texas A&M, it's not going to be this shock to me because I think that there's a lot closer of a gap between Arkansas and some of these teams than maybe before. But that also being said, college football's crazy. A team that doesn't look very good right now in 2 weeks could be looking like a completely different team and look great. So I like where Arkansas is stacking up against the rest of the SEC. Time will tell where they're at, but as of right now, I'm not overly impressed with the conference. I didn't even bring up Georgia. They barely beat Austin Peay. It's like, so what's happening? I don't really know, but from what we know on the field, the SEC does not look like the SEC of old.
And yet at the same time, we've seen Arkansas do what they haven't been able to do. Take care of business against lesser competition. I know this isn't what you were saying, but the Razorback fan that has been growing inside me in this near decade I've lived in the state here can't help but twinge a little bit when we talk about the word close. The first coach that I ever covered here was Brett Bielema. You might remember the Hogs were close.
Always.
They weren't really close for the next guy, but now we've seen similar struggles under Sam Pittman. Those one-score games, losing one-score games, and even against the SEC teams when they're the SEC, Arkansas has still played a lot of teams really close. Now the SEC feels like it's kind of coming down a little bit. Arkansas looks strong so far. Does this Hog team have what it takes, from what we've seen, to get over that hump and maybe win some one-score games against the rest of the conference?
Well, if you're just basing it on what we've seen and basing it on previous years under Sam Pittman, then yes, because as you mentioned, Sam Pittman hasn't exactly dominated the teams that he should dominate, especially in the early going, especially against non-conference opponents. I always think back to a couple years ago when they barely beat Kent State. It's 28-6, and that team went 1-11. You're like, how? Last year against Oklahoma State, at the time it looked like, oh man, it's a tough loss. That team was terrible. They went 3-9.
They continue to be terrible.
Apparently,
Sure,
good grief. Yeah, it's $1 billion to nothing. But the point is that it always felt like at the time you're like, oh, these losses or oh, these close games. What's really going on? Well, right now you don't have that concern because you've dominated both these teams. Does that mean Alabama A&M is going to be good or Arkansas State's going to be good? I don't know. But you are the better team. You are on paper the better team. You walked into the game as the better team, and you showed that you were the better team. That's something that Sam Pittman and some of his teams have not been able to do consistently. They still got 10 games in front of them, but they've done as great of a job and as good of a job as you could ask in their first 2 games. You want to win no matter what. That's all that matters. But in the fashion that you've won, it does make me feel so much better than having to sit here talking about a 28-17 victory. No. You dominated from beginning to end. It's not even a contest.
We've been there. We've done that.
Yes, moving on.
This is better, folks. All right, you kind of started to mention it there, but so now we've seen 2 games against non-conference opponents. How much are you adjusting expectations based on what they were preseason?
Not much at all, just to be honest. Because, listen, if you're a team like Arkansas where there were still a lot of question marks, but you've been dominant and all that, that's great. But that doesn't matter. You beat UAPB 70-0 last year. What did that get you? Nothing. You got to be able to find some consistency. And it's nicely set up Arkansas schedule-wise. I know you haven't played, it feels like it's going to be a month since you played in Fayetteville. But it's nice to have kind of an easier game and then a little bit more of a difficult game. And then, all right, here you go, Ole Miss. You're healthy. You're set up for it. They're a team that has already played an SEC team. Let's see where you stand. You're not losing confidence right now, so let's see where you stack up, where you stand.
All right, we'll see. The ultimate test comes next week. Arkansas on the road at Ole Miss. And, of course, we'll be back next week on Hog Zone.